Ever wondered what it takes to turn a struggling business around? Today, on the Founders Podcast, we have the guy companies call when they are in trouble. Stuart Serwin, founder of Bracket Management and fractional CFO expert, has helped businesses boost their revenue by over 36% and increased net profits by nearly 28%. With over 15 years of experience in business growth and turnaround, Stewart is here to share his insights. I'm your host, Ash, and this is a show where I interview proven founders and industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you build, launch, and grow your business. So I hope you enjoy the show. Stuart, welcome to the show.
Hello, Ash. Thanks for having me.
Do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires or motivates you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think a quote that I have found myself telling a lot of my clients lately is revenue is for vanity and profit is for sanity. I think a lot of
Mhm.
times people get hung up on the top line of their business without really focusing on the in between. And so, I try and drive my clients to really focus on the bottom line.
Got it. Got it. So tell us about bracket management. What does this service do? Who is it for? And what's the main problem you're helping to solve here?
Yeah, so Bracket Management is a fractional CFO company, and it's really for me. I focus primarily in the manufacturing sector, but it's for business owners who have either hit a ceiling from a growth standpoint. They've either grown faster than they can control and somewhat lost control of their business, their financials, or in many cases, they just need assistance. And so our goal is to come in and make sure that we optimize our financials so we can have a forward-looking view. We work on their operations to make sure it operates as efficiently as possible. And once the business is healthy and stable, then we really put in some strategic efforts to make sure they grow. For me, I'm looking for businesses that are less than 30 million a year. I try to get them to 50 million. And at that point, they can really operate and hire their own CFO on a full time basis. So, as a fractional CFO, I have some clients that use me once a month. Other clients are full blown, a part of their management team. But the whole goal is to make sure that the business owner finds relief. He finds some comfort in knowing that his business is a little more under control and has a better understanding and insight into his financials, all in a way just to make his life better and easier.
What are the typical scenarios or challenges with the businesses these founders face when they feel like, oh, you know what, I need a CFO to help me out? What kind of challenges they come to you generally when
Yeah.
they reach out to you?
In general, most of the time they've hit a ceiling and they've actually recognized that they're going backwards in revenue. And so a lot of times really a fractional CFO is somewhat an extension of as a consultant. The difference being
Mhm.
that we actually roll our sleeves up and get involved in the business so we can come in and identify the problems and then work alongside the owner founder for an extended period of time. So the vast majority of the times they've hit a ceiling, they're going backwards and they're like, oh crap, I need some help now.
Mm. And when you say um, they're going backward into their organization, am I
Yeah.
correct to understand that, let's say for example, I have a $10 million business, which 10 million, by 10 million I mean like revenue 10 million in a year, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Annual recurring revenue. And then suddenly I realized that, okay, my head count is like, I don't know, 20. My raw material cost is X. My expenditure on uh, contractors are Y, and after the head counts my profit is Z. But my Z is sort of zero now. It's
Okay.
going negative just because of my head counts or whatever, right? What are the stages you analyze the business and then potentially have a different strategies come through after that analysis to help the businesses?
Yeah. So the very first thing we do when we bring on a client is we really focus. We have about 100-question business assessment that covers strategy, financial, and operation efficiency. Luckily, my
Hmm.
background allows me to. I've ran businesses, from front to back, and so I can kind of have a different insight into all three of those areas. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run the business through those three key points of focus. Each one of those will have its own score. And in from there, we can dive deeper and say, okay, in this area, these are your three weakest points. These are your three strongest points. Traditionally speaking, we will focus on obviously the weakest points to try to stabilize the business for growth. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to analyze your financials. A lot of times the financials are just not correct. You'll see that the
Mhm.
accounting financials, like the accountant's financials, are correct, but the clients themselves, their books are not accurate. So you really can't get a good understanding as to where you're at, right? The other thing I try to do is try to start driving the business to look forward through forecasting. And because again, if you just look at results, you're looking in the rearview mirror, right? So I'm trying to get the company to drive forward and look through the windshield. So again, going in, we assess the business, we find the key areas that need to be corrected for health. Focus on your financials, get the financials clear, and then we focus on a 3x3 strategy where we find three key objectives for growth and then three sub objectives for each one of those. And so then we just make that a part of our business and drive it.
Got it. Got it. That's pretty cool. How many questions you said? 100 something?
100 questions, so about 33, 34 per area, and it covers everything from metrics, mission, um, strategy. It covers again some of your key financial ratios, on time delivery, operations, production, supply chain. It really covers the vast majority, and you can find that on the website and take it for yourself.
Got it. Got it. And any particular reason why you have chosen only, or I might be wrong here. Why do you help only manufacturing sector, or do you have more portfolio available there?
So I do some coaching outside of manufacturing, but I'm 25-year veteran in manufacturing, and so for me, I got my start at an early age at the very entry level, right? And I really held every position within the company, and it taught me the playbook. And
Mm,
so I got my start in supply chain, moved into operations, and ultimately finance. And 10 years ago, I got the opportunity to turn my first company around. Owner hired me, and he said, "Look, I'm going to sell my business, and I'm 97% in one supplier or one customer, and my on time delivery is not good. So again, I'm not going to be able to sell this company as is." And so I took that playbook that I had learned for 15 years and I turned the company around. Then I repeated
mm,
it and I repeated it and I repeated it. And I realized that I understood manufacturing, and I understood the inputs and outputs of the 5 to 6 key portions of it. And for me, it just made sense. Now, again, a lot of this stuff that I utilize, you can apply across multiple industries. But for me, I understand manufacturing.
interesting. And because of that, you think that you're best suitable for help the manufacturing businesses at this point of time.
I do. I do. Again, I do have some coaching there in the design industry. I've done everything from paint contractors, remodeler, landscaper, fencing companies. So I've done a variety of things. But again, when it comes to the strategy portion of it, I understand manufacturing so well it just works.
Got it. And when you say manufacturing, I'm guessing, is it the manufacturing in general? For example, if I am a cola business, then I also I manufacture. If I am, manufacturer of tires, I'm also in manufacturing. And if I'm producing electronics, so do you have like a particular niche inside the manufacturing, or?
No, no. What I've learned is the playbook, and it applies across nearly all manufacturing sectors. At the end of the day, it's demand to supply to production to shipping. And there's a variety of inputs and outputs for each one of those. So traditionally, like I said, the company would hire me because their on time delivery is 52%. I'm going to go in, I'm going to look at those key areas, and I'm going to say, okay, you have an issue with this. Let's look upstream, try to identify what your issue is. Let's fix that. 99% of the time, you fix that and something else is the problem, but there's always normally one glaring issue. And again,
Mhm.
it's just 25 years in the business to understand these are your inputs and outputs of the process.
Got it. Got it. So, Stuart, would you be able to share a compelling case study that highlights how a company, a business leveraged your solution to achieve success and say solve their key business challenge? And I would love to hear about the specific problem they faced and the steps taken to implement your solution and the measurable outcome they experience as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the largest turnaround I was able to accomplish was a company that was 80 million a year in revenue. They had fallen back to 60 million. Their on time delivery was 50 in the 50s. And they just had no clue. Now they assumed that their supply chain was the problem. So I go in and again do the normal thing. And the very first thing I realized was so they were a publicly traded company and forecasting was everything for them. And so what was happening was the sales team manipulated the dates in their ERP system in a way for their forecast to work. So if you
Mm,
understand the supply demand side, when you manipulate dates on the front end of the process, it drives chaos through the supply chain and through the suppliers. And so the purchasing team really had no clue as to what parts they needed when because demand was changing roughly every 30 days. So the very first thing I put in place was stop changing your dates. We have to somewhat be solid. So let's create another method for our forecasting so we can ensure that our demand in the system is great and set in stone. When we did
mm,
that, we realized, okay, we have some issues in the supply chain side in regards to some things in the ERP that we needed to be changed. We stopped that. Now all of a sudden we started having parts come in on time. But then you again walking through the value system, you realize, okay, now I have suppliers X, Y, and Z that are
mm,
problematic. Whatever the case may be, in 6 months, we had reduced all of their past dues to zero. Our on time delivery went from 52% to 99%. We sustained it at 99, 98, 99% for the duration. But what it allowed us to do is it brought back confidence in our sales team that the operations group could get it out of the factory on time. And so with that confidence, with finally starting to clear the backlog out, the sales team was able to go out and sell with confidence. We brought in new programs. Bringing in new programs dropped the increased the volume in our purchasing, which allowed us to drop the cost. So when I left that business, it was 72 million in revenue. We had gained 10% year over year EBITDA for a 4 year period, and it
mm.
really all centered around the very first issue, which was changing the dates in the ERP system, was driving chaos through the whole entire facility.
Perfect. That's heaven for a business who are like already thinking to
Yeah,
lose well, sort of close to closing down. How did you found out these nuts and bolts not working together? There has to be, I mean, you mentioned that you have a playbook, but that
yeah,
playbook must be some kind of like a questions. Do you literally go and talk to people on the
yeah,
shop floor? How does it work?
yeah. That's exactly what it is, really. So I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. So I can come in and ask dumb questions, right? There's not a dumb question, but as a ignorant individual, I can come in and ask questions. But early on in my career, I implemented an ERP system, and that implementation taught me the back end of how the ERPs work. And so that was somewhat of the foundation in regards to, okay, so if you have this, then that. If it equals this, then this. And then you start formulating what that looks like. And again, having started at the bottom and going, or I guess going in every single department, I started to understand and recognize how everything worked off of each other. So I could recognize if this happened, well, okay, something upstream is causing this. And it's just been my career. And so again, for me, it's inputs and outputs of 5 to 6 key areas. And I literally just start asking questions because again, as a black belt, that's what you do. And in many cases, if the problem is severe enough, I'll run a
Mm.
Lean Six Sigma project and we'll just get the key stakeholders in there. And a lot of times it's found out that way.
Interesting, interesting. And let me ask you a question, which is might be a little bit of detour from what we are talking right now. But how do you anticipate the future of your industry evolving, and how's your service positions itself to stay ahead of the curve? Co- You know,
Yeah.
continuing the progress which we are looking with the help of AI, because everywhere it's coming, right? There was like an article I was reading that Amazon has already started implementing these AI robots in their warehouse system now,
Yeah.
which is not very welcome in the big communities of workers working there. So how do you look at that kind of things, and what are your forecast around your space of
Yeah.
industry?
So I'm actually partnering with a guy. We met via LinkedIn, and he's in the AI space because I definitely recognize that AI is going to play a factor. What's
Hmm.
unique about our relationship is so he's a tech AI guy, and I say I'm an old crusty manufacturing guy, and I fully recognize that I have to get with the times, and so what I'm trying to understand is the impact of AI to the business world. Now, again, for me, I focus on small businesses. In many cases, you'll see that the trends or like this AI stuff will impact large business first and will flow down into the small business. So my goal is to stay ahead of the tech curve. My goal is to look and see what that space is doing in the large business and prep my clients for what's going to happen in the small business. Because if they don't come along with how the AI stuff's coming, then they will ultimately be forced out of the business because that's how the world's going. I think in today's world, there's still so much human intervention that's required for some of the AI stuff to work. But it's moving so fast. We were talking the other day. It could be 2 to 3 years, and the world's changed. And that I just look at Chat GPT. A year ago, I used it for one way. It's improved so much now. I use it in a much greater way, and so
Mm.
it's changing quick. So I'm trying to stay close to the space. Again, I do have a partner that we talk on a regular basis, and we're very much in tune to it. He's trying to learn the manufacturing world, and I'm trying to learn the AI world, so that partnership works.
Got it. Got it. And have you started solutionizing, or no, that's not the right word. I think, have you started advising your customers, or the businesses reach out to you with small, elements of your whole solution playbook where AI is a part of it, or is it still not there?
So I do to some extent, but a lot of times these companies are smaller, and I spend a lot of time just getting them up to the modern state.
Mm,
Not really even looking much to the future yet. So a lot of it is trying to get the company healthy and grow. Now, in that, obviously, as we're trying to grow them, I will, drop in little nuggets of, hey, you could use this to improve this.
mm.
Um, but it's not the forefront of what we talk about. Again, it may be an off subject, it may be in some discussions when we do a SWOT analysis or whatnot, but it's not in the everyday conversation that we have today.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So let's take a step back then. Before we move more forward towards what are the different tactics you utilize in order to help the customers, Stuart, I'm eager to learn more about the person as yourself. Can you take us back to your roots and share with our listeners about your upbringing, your childhood? How did your early experiences shape your journey and eventually led you to become a visionary entrepreneur?
Yeah.
And were there any key influences from your family, your surrounding, like a rich dad poor dad kind of situation,
Yeah.
that played a significant role in shaping up your entrepreneur spirit?
Yeah. So I was lucky to have known since I was about 12 or 13 years old that I wanted to go in the business. For me, I
Mhm.
didn't know what that looked like. Was it small business? Was it large business? Was it entrepreneurship? I really didn't know. My
Mhm.
dad started his first company when I was about 14, 15 years old, and he really gave me the first shot, right, to put me to work. Again, it was on the factory floor learning the process. Um, I knew that I wanted to try it all. So I went to school. I ultimately went and got an MBA because I didn't want anything to hold me back. And I said, if I wanted to go corporate, then I have the MBA to fall back on. And so for the first 10 years, it was just exploring that piece. So I worked for my dad coming right out of college. Ultimately, left there to get my first corporate job as a buyer.
Mhm.
Learned so much about global purchasing and global operations. Um, in that same time frame, I started investing heavily in real estate. So I left. I left that in corporate world to try entrepreneurship for the first time. And that was in the 2007, 8, 9, 10 range. So you know what happened there. The real estate market crashed.
Yeah.
And so did my business. But that's when I started bracket management because I really had about 3 businesses. I had a college buddy of mine who had 3 to 4 businesses, but none of the businesses were really large enough to sustain any overhead at all. And so we decided to pull the resources together and say, hey, let's start bracket management. And basically, it was business as a service. And so we were running the marketing, the HR, legal, all that fun stuff out of bracket. And basically, we're trying to let the other companies run on their own. So
Mm,
from there, in our community, our church community, people started realizing, hey, you have a business that helps businesses. We were like, yeah, like we've always wanted to start a company, but we know nothing about business. And so we started bringing on clients.
mm,
Again, my main revenue source at the time was real estate. When that dried up, I had to figure something else out. And then I got hired in an aerospace company in 2010. Now, little did I know that I would be the guy that they would send out to fix the supply base if they couldn't support the program. So that
mm,
playbook that I keep referencing that I built the first 10 years of my career, I was able to pull that playbook out and go into suppliers, really not knowing them, not knowing their situation, their environment at all, and saying, okay, what's the problem? Why
mm,
are you not able to support the program? And I would just turn the supplier around, turn them over to a buyer, and so on and so forth. Fast forward 5 years, I get the opportunity to turn the first business around utilizing that same playbook. So if you go back and look, it was the really early part of my career that I learned the ins and outs of the business. I just grew it to understand strategy. I relaunched Bracket, focusing on strategy and fractional CFO work, and then the rest is history. So it's again, if it weren't for my dad giving me a shot, putting me through the ringer, and then some of the early entrepreneurial experience, then Bracket wouldn't be where it's at today.
mm. That's interesting because I think it's important for a founder to taste failure a couple of times. That
Oh yeah.
makes the entrepreneur learn these kind of, and make you give you more passion and grit,
Oh yeah.
inside. And your story is literally doing that, basically coming starting from somewhere, and then failing, and then learning from that failure, and then jumping on the next one. So you build this reputation of turning businesses around, right? what
Yep.
what what's the first thing you look at when you're starting with a new client? Or while answering this question, you can also take us back to that part when you mentioned that in your local community, when people started asking you that you help businesses, you have a business who help businesses, right?
That's
So
right.
how that kind of message played around in the market, and what sort of customers you were helping that point of time compared to what you deal with today?
Yeah. So in that point in time, it was no strategy at all. So it's strictly my portion of it was the bookkeeping side, the
Mm,
accounting, and maybe some high level business operations oversight. And that
mm,
time is really solopreneurs who were there, a lot of startups, nothing again of any strategy or size. And so at that point, if you if you had any interest at all, we would help you. No, there was, we were agnostic to anything, any industry, but if you wanted to start a company, we were there. Um, and so you fast forward to today, I've learned so much about strategy. And what I learned back in 2008 is most of these companies really needed the strategy side of it. There's one thing to be a bookkeeper and to have clean financials and clean financial records. It's another thing to really have intent and drive your business. And so
mm,
that's really the biggest change. So in 2010, when I had to go back to corporate, Bracket was basically put on the shelf. And then in since 2010 until till now, it was always, man, if we could just do this or Bracket, if we could just do that with Bracket. And what I learned is I just continued to grow as a professional and just started adding those experiences. And it really was, spending some time in a high level VP of finance and operations role where I really learned a lot about strategy and driving the business with intent. The whole time I was at that company, all I could think about was if you could take this same experience and go into the small business world, and if they would adopt these principles and these mindsets, the world is theirs, right? If they could grasp it and just absolutely demand drive growth in their company. And so that's the biggest thing I'm driving now is, do you want to grow? It's one thing to bring you on as a client if you just say I need some help, but I need to get my financial straight, or my on time delivery is a problem. I'm really
mm.
looking for those guys who say I am wanting to grow. I have a goal and I just don't know how to get there. And that is great because now I can really teach you how to develop strategy and drive your business with absolute intent and discipline.
Got it, got it. You often mention the importance of having a healthy business. can
Yep.
you can you walk us through the key plays you recommend to achieve that?
Yeah. So the first key play, particularly if you're hiring me to come in, the first key thing we're going to really focus on is communication plan. A lot of times you see that communication throughout the facility is difficult. It's non-existent. And when you leave employees to their own minds or their own imagination, they come up with the God only and stuff. I've heard everything from, oh my God, they brought this guy in because they're trying to sell the business, or we're in huge trouble to kind of shut it down. So they brought this guy in. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to develop a communication plan. That's going to be weekly, monthly focused, quarterly reviews, semi-annual reviews, so on and so forth. The second
Mm.
thing I'm going to do is develop an annual plan or an annual budget. This budget's going to be set in stone. It's going to be the North Star, how we drive the business. We're going to forecast and plan around that. But again, you have to have some type of a goal that you're going to be driving to for the next 12 months. Once
Mm.
that annual plan's set in stone, then we know our sales targets. I'm going to work with them to try to do a 2 to 3x sales funnel to make sure that they have enough sales to cover their, or at least some sales targets to cover the plan. From there, we're going to develop monthly reviews. That's going to incorporate the forecasting review, modify your actions and activities to make sure you can continue to work towards your plan. We're going to do some S&OP meetings to make sure that our sales and operations teams are aligned. We're going to do major project changes or project updates at that time frame and drive from there. The fifth key plan is to make sure you're controlling your cost, not just controlling, but reducing. And so part of the plan, we do cost reduction targets. And so our goal is to try to reduce costs 3% each year. So I'm going to drive the team to give me ideas, because you're going to have half of them it's not going to work. And the last key driver is make sure that there's a comprehensive employee plan, and that means that every employee has a job description, every employee has um, pay range, they know their KPIs. Are they winning? Are they losing? And as soon as we can get the company healthy, then we drive to put them in some type of a bonus program where they're rewarded for their efforts.
Perfect. Do you kind of have like a checklist for these steps, or do you already have things ready?
So I'm actually building out a booklet now. So I know it in my head, and I'm driving
Mhm.
the companies to work that. But I'm actually filling out and developing the model now that'll be a little more publicly available here in the next month.
Perfect, perfect. I have you already decided the name for the book?
No, I've dabbled with a variety of things. I've actually now added a seventh key play, and that's value generation. So once the business is healthy, then we drive to play number 7, which is value creation through pricing strategies, cost reduction strategies, and new business development. So um, that's all happened in the last 2 weeks. I'm toyed with the name of manufacturing operating playbook. Because again, if you operate in this way, you will succeed. Our goal is to get you a 10% year over year growth in net income, and if you operate in this manner, you should 100% achieve that. So my goal is to have it on the website and have it broadcasted here in the next month.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Good luck with that.
thank you.
Um, so before moving forward with our second part of the interview, I would like to ask you sort of like a personal question. Can you
Okay.
share a moment when you were faced like with a tough decision, maybe just by yourself or with your partner, that had an immense impact on your business trajectory, and how did you navigate through it?
Yeah, so probably when the real estate business was really starting to show that it was failing, I was running out of money quickly.
Mm.
Um, and I got a call from my attorney who was doing a closing, and the attorney said, "We think something's going on in your business because the closing proceeds that you were receiving early on, they've dwindled down, and this proceeds that you're getting from this is next to nothing. So I'm running out of cash. The market's changing dramatically." And so I was really faced with the decision, do I continue to go all in? I mean, at this point, I was selling everything that I
Mhm.
could, to try to float the business. Um, and I had a call to make. I had 3 small businesses that were running. None of them were really operating to the level that was supporting my personal goals. I had babies, so I was faced with the hard decision. Do I keep doing this or do I go corporate? And for
Mm.
me, I get asked this a lot. Do you prefer entrepreneurship versus the corporate route? I'm very comfortable in both and like both. biggest thing for me is I just want to make sure that whatever I'm doing is driving growth and the company's growing. And so I was at a crossroads. Do I go the corporate route, or do I keep doing the entrepreneurship? For me, I decided to go the corporate route for the next decade, and it paid
Mm,
off tremendously. But at the time, I mean, I can remember I'd get the guys going on the job site, and I'd go sit in my truck and cry like a baby because I'm like, I do not know what to do.
mm,
And so it was very difficult, very difficult. But again, for me, it was the right call to make.
mm. So when you got out of it, when you started the brackets, I'm sure that early stages, as you mentioned, that early stages are very, unorganized, and then slowly, you created the whole playbook, and then you got things organized and everything. Now, what's the process you're using, right, or what is your lead generation process by which you get more customers now? Because I interview quite a lot of coaches and fractional CMOs on this podcast. Did all of them have different strategies in place for getting more customers? And then if somebody is looking to get someone like you, um, what are the right ways to search for somebody like you? Let's say somebody is looking for a Stuart Irwin counterpart in Japan, but
Yeah,
that person doesn't know whom to search for
right.
example.
Yeah. So currently, the majority of my clients are coming through referrals,
Hmm.
and I'm somewhat running up against the fact that the fractional CFO is still something that's fairly new to most people. So I talk to a lot of people, and they really have no clue what a fractional CFO is. So once I explain exactly what the process is, they're like, "Oh my God, that's great." But initially, they really don't have a clue. Now, I could be calling on the wrong people, but that's the first impression that I get. So when I'm having, again, right now, everything's coming via referrals. Um, so I'm just continuing to be super active on LinkedIn, trying to drive engagement there. I have the business assessment on the website. Um, I do a lot of Google ads, so I have a decent traffic coming through Google ads, but still a lot of people just don't know what a fractional CFO is. Not only do they not know what it is, a lot of times they don't know that they need it until they need it. And so
Hmm.
it's somewhat difficult to get a company to go, you know what, I need this. A lot of times it's, oh God, I'm in trouble. Right. So a lot of times when they say I'm in trouble, then they're going to be looking for a consultant versus a fractional CFO. So I'm somewhat still dabbling with the lead generation side. Um, but if you're looking for someone like me, I find that there really are two types of accounting finance people in the world. You have the reporting types, and again, those are the individuals who the numbers and books are spotless, the closes on time, they do amazing presentations. But at the end of the day, they report that to a president or a VP or whatnot, and they really don't assist with how to fix the numbers. They just know the numbers. Then I call the other type an operator. So they do the exact same thing, but they can also add insight into, okay, your costs are incorrect here. If you go turn these knobs, you should see improvement there. Or I'm recognizing a trend here. I think we need to go focus in there. So I'm finding that particularly in the smaller businesses, that second operator is the best individual to go out there, because you really need a partner with your business. I mean, a lot of times as a founder or CEO or the president, they're very lonely. They're at the top and just trying to figure it out. They truly need a partner. And so for me, luckily I'm a finance and an operations guy. And so I'm kind of blessed to have can be that guy who can turn the knob. So I would again advise anyone to, if you're trying to bring someone on that is fractional CFO, to, if you need operational help, to find that operator type.
Got it. Got it. I mean, this is interesting. Even for the founders who are starting up right now, they will reach at some point at the stage where they will require this kind of services. And then, they might remember, oh, I heard this podcast where I saw Stuart who used, who did this fractional CFO thing. Um, Based on this experience with all these businesses you helped, Stuart,
Yep.
what advice would you give our listeners around what stage of their business they should actually start looking for a fraction CFO? The reason I'm asking this is because, as you mentioned, that a lot of people don't even know if they
Yeah.
require it. So, what kind of what kind of triggers they should keep an eye upon in their businesses, which tells them, okay, now this is the right time to bring help from
Yeah.
outside.
It's interesting. I was having a conversation with a guy yesterday, and we talked about this very thing. I find that it is so individual to the company or the president or owner. There are some guys who can get a company to $1 million and they lose all sight as, all right, what do I do next? I've got some guys that are 10 million, some guys that are 20 million. Again, I've worked all the way up to 80 million. At
Mm,
some point, the founder will hit this ceiling. So for me, I'd say look internally as to at what point do you start to feel uncomfortable? At what
mm,
point are you looking around saying, I don't know what else to do? If you look at your P&L and your balance sheet and you go, this doesn't match what my accountant has, you've probably lost control of your business. If you recognize and you say, you know what, I just look at my checking account, I look at my receivables, and they're good, then you're gonna get to a point where that's not gonna be sufficient. So again, when you start to feel discomfort, you probably should start looking out. Again, with the fractional CFO stuff, it could start at $1,000 a month to go all the way up to 10,000 a month. And a lot of the fractional guys tailor their services based on the needs of that company. So some guys may say, hey, I just need you to help with strategy. Some say I need full, ownership of the entire department. Some say I need full ownership and help across the whole business. And that's the beauty of the fractional world. It is customized and tailored to the needs of the client. But look
yeah,
internally. Look
yeah.
internally. When you start to feel discomfort, you probably should start looking.
That's really awesome because sometimes you have parts of your financial vertical in control, but parts
That's
you
right.
don't know what to do. So
That's
it's
right.
it's really really beautiful. Great, I'm enjoying this conversation quite a lot, Stuart. But it's like we are limited with time,
Yeah.
so we have to jump into our quick fire round. I've got 6 quick fire questions for you. So yeah, you can answer them as quickly as possible. You
Okay.
ready?
Let's go.
Great. What are the 3 top strategies to maintain your business in the finance space in 2024 in a streamlined fashion?
So strategy number one, just continue to be super active on social. Um, Strategy number two is offer as much value upfront as possible to gain that trust. Again, I'm in a market that's really somewhat unknown, so I have to continue to gain that trust. And then strategy number three is when I land the client, add so much value that he can't help but to scream, "I've
Mm,
got a guy who can help you."
cool. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
So Entree Leadership by Dave Ramsey taught me a ton. It's I guess he'll call it a playbook as well, but it's a how to run a small business from front end to back end. So for me, I read that as soon as it came out, and I was like, oh man, these are how some of the puzzle pieces go together. So Entree Leadership by Dave Ramsey.
Perfect. Thank you. What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Grit.
Mm, great. I agree. Grit is something which I also look for.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to
Yeah.
have it.
What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
Personal productivity tool or habit. So I try to utilize white space. So I try to have every minute of my day planned the day before, sometimes 2 days before. I found that I'm much more efficient when I sit back ahead of time and plan my day. I knock stuff out a lot better than before. So again, I utilize the white space mentality.
Cool. What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had time?
Mm. So I actually just launched a supply chain consulting company. So that is like a week old. So I would say that would probably be it. That's the one I'm most that's the freshest on my mind now is supply chain consulting.
Got it. Got it. And last but not least, what's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
That most people don't know. So I am a avid death metal fan. I know I don't
Mm,
look like it, and I'm an avid bass fisherman as well. So I'm like on the spectrum of I'm a country boy that loves avid death metal. So that trips a lot of people up when I go in and they'll either hear something in my truck or they hear something playing in my headphones and they're like, "What are you listening to?" And it's like, "Yeah, I've been a metal fan my whole life." So, and I'm talking about extreme death metal. So that's
wow.
probably it.
Ah, there you go. Now
Yeah,
I know. Now our listeners know.
absolutely.
Great, great. Stuart, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story and packing last few years of building this business and some ups and downs. If people want to check out your website or if people want to, understand if you can help them out or get in touch with you, what's the best
Yeah.
way to do it?
So our website's bracketmgmt.com. Also very active on LinkedIn. And I can be reached in either one of those two. If you were interested in the business assessment, then the website has that right on the front page.
Hmm.
The one on the front page is more of a condensed version, so I think it's only 30 questions, but we do have the 100-question assessment if there's interest there.
Perfect. Great. Stuart, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Thank you, Ash. It's been good.
Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Founders Podcast. I hope you found our conversation with Stuart insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to go on mgmt.com and get your business questions answered there, potentially get some help from Stuart. If you enjoyed this show, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on future interviews. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep building.